the world's hardest dead game, a forgotten player, and the final floor nobody could clear. But today, Baek Jinwoo is about to end the legend. Persistent bastards. As I was saying, no matter how much you struggle, it's futile. Since I'll be clearing this 100th floor very soon, Baek Jinwoo, the #1 ranked player of the game, Battle of Summoners. That's me, and this game, also known as BOS, is basically a dead game now. No popularity, insane difficulty, and only veteran players are left. But still, does the player PvP ranking even matter anymore? Either way, Baek Jinwoo stays at #1. Didn't they say Baek Jinwoo is free to play? How the hell does he do it? As expected of the Celestial Sun class, I heard he broke the daily dungeon time attack record again. Seriously, that's crazy. Ain't Baek Jinwoo hacking, lol? How did he clear the Chaos Worm in just 47 seconds? Nah, don't disrespect him like that. At this point, it might honestly be faster to become one of Baek Jinwoo's summons instead. As you can see, I shattered Transcendence records and became a living legend inside the game. 1 heaven, 5 emperors. Reached the 70th floor of the Tower of Trials. My real life is completely ruined. I was addicted to games for years. I didn't even go to college. What's worse is I don't even have a proper job like everyone else. My parents never said anything directly, but deep down they must be suffering because of me. So I decided to quit this dead game and finally get my life together. I'm 24 years old now. At the very least, I should start acting like an actual functioning human being, right? So for the sake of my rehabilitation, and to give the name Baek Jinwoo a proper ending, I'm really going to clear this final round and quit for real this time. Summon window, get White Whale, ultimate skill. White Whale has been summoned. 1 heaven, 5 emperors, player rank 2, Rachel. By the way, if he reaches the 100th floor right now, Sugoi. Wow, Baek Jinwoo never disappoints. 1 heaven, 5 emperors. Reached the 70th floor of the Tower of Trials. I already cleared the 99th floor ages ago though. Baek Chen and the others were talking after the announcement that someone had reached the 70th floor of the Tower of Trials. Moscow Man mentioned the rumor that if anyone cleared the 100th floor, a completely new world would open. Baek Chen wondered if that meant the whole game system would change, but Rachel, the rank 2 player, laughed and said the developers probably wrote it as a joke because nobody was expected to clear the 100th floor. Still, Baek Chen joked about what would happen if their real world actually turned into the world of summoners. At that moment, Baek Jinwoo finally cleared the 100th floor and shouted in excitement that he had beaten it at last. People around him thought he looked crazy, but he proudly called himself the one who conquered the impossible tower. Suddenly, strange messages appeared in the sky saying, the beta testing period has ended, and a new world is being created. Giant game screens covered the sky, while mysterious summoning scrolls appeared everywhere. Some people thought it was an event, and tried tearing the scrolls, while others panicked and warned them to stop. Chaos quickly spread as accidents started happening around the city, and Jinwoo realized the cursed game had become reality. Over here! Someone got hit by a car. Yeah, that's me. Help me. I don't want to die. Soon after, the news began reporting on the changing world, while South Korea continued struggling in the International Player League. After that, I found myself in a hospital. My mom and dad also there. The association announced that more high-rank summons were needed to protect the world, and experts argued that the government should spend the national budget to obtain stronger summoning scrolls. Meanwhile, Jinwoo finally woke up after being unconscious for 3 years. His mother cried in relief and quickly called for a doctor after seeing him awake. When Jinwoo opened his eyes, he was shocked to learn that 3 years had already passed since the accident. Even more shocking was the fact that the world of Battle of Summoners becoming reality was not a dream at all. Summons now existed in everyday life, and his father even used a small pebble golem summon to help load delivery packages. The world had completely changed. At the same time, the strongest rankers in the world were searching for the legendary player Baek Jinwoo, believing that finding him was the key to climbing the Tower of Trials further. Rachel, now known as the World Rank 1 and one of the 5 emperors, publicly stated that they were still waiting for him, and if he appeared, the world would once again change in an unpredictable way. Hearing this, Jinwoo realized they were talking about him. He also recognized Rachel from the famous guild, One Heaven, Five Emperors. As he looked around, he could hardly believe that the game had truly become reality. Suddenly, a system message appeared asking if he wanted to start the tutorial. His mother worriedly told him not to rush and to rest first, but Jinwoo calmly refused. He said he needed to adapt quickly because the world had already changed. Even though he had nothing and still did not fully understand the new reality, he remained confident. To him, this situation would be easy, because when it came to Battle of Summoners, he believed he could always become the strongest player in the world. After being discharged from the hospital, Jinwoo returned home and started researching how the world had changed after Battle of Summoners became reality. Everything from player battles and raids to dungeons and the Tower of Trials now existed in real life. 3 years had already passed, and people had mostly adapted to living alongside summons. Even so, Jinwoo believed none of them could match his skill and experience in the game. Soon, his tutorial finally began. As expected, there was nobody around, because he had purposely gone to a deserted place since he did not know what kind of summon might appear. The tutorial reward gave him 2 low-grade summoning scrolls, along with a warning recommending that they should be used outside. At that moment, the situation finally started feeling real to him. Even though he was Baek Jinwoo, also known as Ilchin, and the legendary god Jinwoo, he knew he would be in serious trouble if he got a useless summon from the start. Battle of Summoners was famous for its terrible pull rates, with low-grade scrolls containing everything from S-rank to F-rank summons, with insanely low chances. Even getting a D-rank summon from the scroll only had around a 1% chance. Nervously, Jinwoo prayed for something useful, saying he would even be thankful for an E-rank summon. As he activated the scroll, a bright light appeared, and suddenly a system message announced that player Baek Jinwoo had obtained the summon Wind Fairy, an EX rank summon. Jinwoo froze in shock because he had never even heard of an EX rank before. At the same time, the tiny Wind Fairy excitedly shouted in surprise, asking if she had really been summoned again after such a long time. Jinwoo was stunned that a summon could actually speak. Then he suddenly remembered something and called her Ramba. The fairy became shocked because only one person had ever called her by that nickname before. God Jinwoo himself. Realizing the truth, she stared at Jinwoo in disbelief and excitedly asked if he was really God Jinwoo, saying she had missed him so much. Jinwoo finally remembered that although Wind Fairy was officially considered only an E-rank summon in the game, her hidden abilities became incredibly powerful when used correctly with the right runes and strategies. Jinwoo finally remembered why the Wind Fairy named Ramba felt so familiar. Back during his beginner days in Battle of Summoners, she had been one of his favorite summons because her skill could massively increase attack speed, making even weak summons incredibly powerful. Since they had spent so much time together, he had even given her the nickname Ramba. However, he clearly remembered that she had disappeared from the game during the first year after the developers claimed she caused serious balance problems. They labeled her as overpowered and removed her without giving players any compensation, which had made Jinwoo furious because he had spent an entire year raising her. Looking at her current status window, Jinwoo saw that Wind Fairy was now classified as an EX rank isolated summon. The description explained that she had been isolated after developers discovered balance-breaking abilities under certain conditions. Her skill, Wind Pressure, increased a summon's attack speed every time her staff was swung. Confused by the word isolated, Jinwoo questioned her, and Ramba sadly explained that she had suddenly been dragged into a strange place and trapped there for years without being able to escape. When Jinwoo asked who imprisoned her, she suddenly clutched her head in pain and claimed she could not remember properly, as if someone had placed restrictions on her memories. Even so, she revealed one important detail. She was not alone. There were other isolated summons trapped like her, although they had all been separated into different rooms. She estimated there were around 10 of them in total. Hearing this shocked Jinwoo because he immediately realized that the 10 summons that had mysteriously vanished from the game due to bug classifications while he was playing were probably all EX rank isolated summons. Ramba then explained that whenever Jinwoo used a summoning scroll, Isolated summons also had a chance to answer the call. Jinwoo quickly noticed something strange. Only the summoning scrolls he used seemed capable of reacting this way. He began wondering if clearing the 100th floor of the Tower of Trials had given him a special hidden reward that allowed low-grade summoning scrolls to produce EX rank summons. Excited, he immediately used another scroll, but this time he only obtained a weak F-rank hairy gorilla summon. Annoyed, he cursed the game's terrible RNG, but still realized that EX rank summons were possible, meaning he simply needed to open as many scrolls as possible to maximize his chances. If he could gather all the EX rank summons, he believed he might become even stronger than he was during his legendary days as Ilchin, the strongest player. Afterward, Jinwoo told Ramba to stop calling him God Jinwoo and just call him Jinwoo, because the title God was too much. He knew that if people discovered the legendary God Jinwoo also possessed EX rank summons, he could become the target of fear, jealousy, and dangerous attention. Suddenly, before he could think further, a system message appeared announcing the next tutorial step. A beginner dungeon had been created, and he was ordered to enter immediately. Even though Jinwoo had conquered countless dungeons in the game before, reality felt completely different. For the first time, he honestly admitted to himself that he was scared. Still, he calmed himself down, reminding himself that it was only a tutorial dungeon and that he would not be fighting directly. Determined to adapt to this changed world as quickly as possible, Jinwoo accepted the challenge and stepped inside the dungeon. The dark atmosphere instantly made him uneasy, and as the system confirmed his entry into the beginner dungeon, Jinwoo realized that everything was truly beginning now. To enter a dungeon, players had to form a team using summons, with a maximum of 5 summons allowed per team. Jinwoo was asked if he wanted to assign Wind Fairy, the EX rank summon, and the weak F rank Hairy Gorilla to Team 1. Normally, players would fill all 5 slots to increase their chances of survival, so entering with only 2 summons looked reckless. However, Jinwoo was completely calm because he had already tested countless strategies during his years playing Battle of Summoners. He had cleared situations like this thousands of times before, and the perfect strategy was already mapped out in his head. As soon as the dungeon started, Wind Fairy and Hairy Gorilla were automatically summoned. The tutorial dungeon's mission was simple: defeat the starving great wolf nearby and escape the cave. Jinwoo noticed that the player protection system from the game had been perfectly recreated in reality, surrounding players with a protective shield. However, there was one terrifying warning: if he was attacked by a summon without protection, he would die for real. This was no longer just a game where failure meant restarting. Even so, Jinwoo quickly ordered Hairy Gorilla to attack. The gorilla moved too slowly against the wolf, but Jinwoo had expected that from such a low-rank summon. He immediately told Ramba to use her skill. Excitedly swinging her staff, Wind Fairy activated Wind Pressure, massively boosting Hairy Gorilla's attack speed. Jinwoo was impressed once again by how broken her support ability really was. Watching the battle in real life felt much more intense than in the game, especially seeing the giant wolf standing right in front of him. Even though he trusted the strategy completely, he still worried about unexpected real-world variables. Ramba continued boosting the gorilla while the wolf was overwhelmed by the speed increase, and soon the monster was defeated. The dungeon was successfully cleared, rewarding Jinwoo with 2 lesser strength runes. Relieved, Jinwoo realized he had survived his very first real dungeon. Afterward, the story shifted to his younger sister, Baek Jinwoo. Since the world changed 3 years ago, she had become a rune farming player to support the family after Jinwoo's accident. Her job involved clearing low-level dungeons and selling runes to other players for profit. She had gotten extremely lucky when she found an intermediate-grade summoning scroll and managed to pull a rare C-rank Shadow Elf summon with only a 1% drop chance. Thanks to that summon, she was able to earn a steady income through rune farming. Later, Jinwoo called her after being discharged from the hospital. When he jokingly called her a rune hawker, she angrily corrected him and insisted she was a professional rune farming player. Jinwoo then asked about the location of the synthesis shop, and Ajin explained that all summon-related facilities were located inside special player zones near the Towers of Trials. In South Korea, the Towers of Trials only appeared in Jamsil and Haeundae, so those areas became giant hubs filled with dungeons, synthesis shops, enhancement centers, and other player facilities. Hearing this, Jinwoo realized it made perfect sense for important systems to gather around the towers. Ajin then curiously asked what rank summon he had obtained. Jinwoo lied and casually answered that he only got E rank and F rank summons because he did not want anyone discovering his EX rank secret. Ajin became impressed anyway, saying even an E rank summon only had around a 5% chance. Jinwoo apologized internally for lying to his little sister, but he knew revealing the truth would be dangerous. He then asked Ajin to help him learn the new systems and show him around the player zone, because he wanted to adapt to the changed world as quickly as possible. Ajin laughed at his confidence when he claimed he might become the world's best player, reminding him that monsters like Rachel and Xenos always dominated the rankings. To her, those people were geniuses chosen by fate. Jinwoo simply smiled and told her to stop talking and guide him around the player zone so he could see the new world for himself. As they walked through the player zone, Ajin became curious about the summon Jinwoo had pulled and asked him what he got from his summoning scroll. Jinwoo casually answered that it was just a wind fairy, but Ajin had never even heard of such a summon and immediately demanded to see it. Jinwoo tried to refuse, asking why she even cared, but Ajin complained that showing the summon would not wear it out, and insisted it was unfair because she was willing to show hers first. Feeling proud, she summoned her C-rank Shadow Elf and confidently warned Jinwoo not to be too shocked. However, Jinwoo only gave a weak reaction, which immediately annoyed her because in the current world, anything C-rank or above was considered extremely valuable and rare. Internally, though, Jinwoo could barely take it seriously because during his days as the legendary player Ilchin, C-rank summons were considered low-level material, usually sacrificed as enhancement fodder at synthesis shops. Curious, Jinwoo tried speaking to the Shadow Elf and politely greeted it, asking it to take good care of his little sister. Ajin looked at him like he was insane and asked how a summon was supposed to talk in the first place. That was when Jinwoo realized something shocking. Summons normally could not speak at all. Since Ramba had spoken naturally from the moment she appeared, he had assumed all humanoid summons gained the ability to talk after the world became reality. Only now did he understand that Ramba was a completely unique existence. Realizing how dangerous that secret was, Jinwoo quickly refused to show his own summon and told Ajin he would do it later. He worried that if anyone saw or heard Ramba speaking, she would instantly attract dangerous attention. Ajin pouted and called him a scammer, before continuing to guide him through the player zone. They arrived at what used to be Jamsil World, but after the Tower of Trials appeared, the entire area had been rebuilt into a giant player district. Ajin explained that nobody wanted to visit an amusement park sitting beside a terrifying tower filled with dungeons, so the place naturally transformed into a hub for players instead. Even so, Jinwoo found the atmosphere strangely exciting. Seeing the places and systems from Battle of Summoners existing in real life filled him with nostalgia. They passed through a huge marketplace where players traded everything from summoning scrolls to runes, and Jinwoo remembered spending endless hours there in the game with rich players like Baek Jinwoo. Ajin pointed out the information desk and suggested Jinwoo join the academy run by player headquarters so he could learn the basics step by step, since he was still technically a beginner in this world. However, Jinwoo calmly refused because there was nothing the academy could teach him. He already possessed more knowledge and experience than almost anyone alive, and he planned to spend his future growing stronger inside dungeons anyway. Although Ajin remained worried about how strangely he had been acting ever since waking up, she eventually decided to leave him alone after reminding him not to overwork himself and to call her if he needed help. Once she was gone, Jinwoo immediately summoned Ramba in secret and firmly warned her never to speak outside dungeons again, because people absolutely could not discover her existence. Ramba silently nodded her head in understanding. Finally alone, Jinwoo, he knew he needed starting capital if he wanted to properly run dungeons and grow stronger. Looking at the tiny amount of money left in his bank account, he let out a bitter sigh. Compared to the legendary player he once was, His current situation felt miserable, and he realized wasting time on ordinary part-time jobs would never be enough to survive in this new world. Jinwoo became frustrated while thinking about his terrible financial situation. Some people might simply tell him to ask his parents for money, but to him that idea was unacceptable. His parents were already working multiple jobs just to keep the family alive after his accident, and he refused to become a burden on them any longer. Even so, Jinwoo did not lose confidence. Back in Battle of Summoners, the reason the legendary god Jinwoo stood above everyone else was because he was an F2P ranker, who became the strongest without spending any money. The game was infamous for its brutal pay-to-win system, and players like Baek Jinwoo had spent hundreds of millions of won trying to grow stronger. Yet Jinwoo still surpassed them all, using only skill, grinding, and strategy. Because of that, he believed he could absolutely rise to the top again, even in this new reality. Just as he strengthened his resolve, he suddenly received a notification saying 500,000 won had been deposited into his account. Shocked, he first wondered if it was some kind of beginner reward, but then he saw a message from his mother. She wrote that Ajin told her he was already trying hard again after waking up, and knowing his personality, she guessed he would never ask for allowance himself. Reading her words made Jinwoo remember the painful years his mother spent desperately caring for him while he was unconscious. He realized how much his family had suffered while supporting him, and he silently thanked her while promising himself that he would succeed. No matter what, he swore that one day he would make his entire family live comfortably. Jinwoo knew the rest of the world had already spent 3 years moving forward, while he remained left behind, so every second mattered if he wanted to catch up. To become the strongest again, he needed to act immediately. Since growth in Battle of Summoners depended on farming runes, hunting monsters, pulling summons, leveling them up, and building strong teams, he decided the first thing he needed was a better roster of summons. Using the money, Jinwoo purchased 3 more low-grade summoning scrolls. The results gave him an F-rank sludge, an F-rank horned butterfly, and finally an E-rank poison lizard. Jinwoo was actually satisfied because pulling an E-rank summon already had a low chance, and counting Ramba as an E-rank equivalent meant he had beaten the odds twice within only a few summons. He also knew the poison lizard had decent cost efficiency during the early stages, even though he planned to eventually replace it later. With that, he finalized his temporary team and began thinking seriously about the future. To Jinwoo, the Battle of Summoners growth system was simple. Gather summons, equip the correct runes, fight monsters, grind endlessly, and continue getting stronger. Compared to the impossible grind he survived in the original game, this level of work was nothing. More importantly, if he could truly gather all 10 hidden EX-rank summons that had disappeared years ago, then even S-rank teams or the legendary 100th floor of the Tower of Trials would no longer be obstacles. Filled with determination, Jinwoo made up his mind. Before anything else, he would find every remaining EX-rank summon in existence.